it's Friday, and it's like, woo! I want to do, okay, I guess my day job is, I head up the 3D pipeline for Walmart, the creation of it and operationalizing of those assets so that they can be leveraged by the entire enterprise for all use cases like XR and packaging and in-store. But today I'm really here as an emotional intelligence practitioner. And so what I want to say is, what we're going to cover today is kind of the thing that you think about for a long time. And so please reach out to me on LinkedIn. If I don't respond right away, it doesn't mean that your question's not important. And because some of this is like practice and role play, and I'm passionate about it, so please do reach out. And I want to start with kind of a fun like grounding exercise. So if your feet are on the floor, or at least one foot on the floor, try to like actually feel the ground underneath your feet. Because what I discovered was where we're sitting right now, a couple hundred years ago, it was mostly orchards. And then in about 1878, coinciding with the finishing of the Transcontinental Railroad, it was from Santa Clara that the very first fruit was packaged and exported to the rest of the country. And I have the clicker, right? I'm waiting for my assistant. There we go. And the fruit that was exported was cherries and pears. So I was thinking, like, it's interesting because we're already sitting in a place that has had some firsts for innovation, for spreading the word. I'm not going to do the whole it's juicy and whatever. But I thought that was really interesting. It could kind of root us. So we're sitting in this orchard. Okay. So you're here for EQ. Stop talking about fruit. I think that what makes us who we are, the facets of our personality and our likes and dislikes, that all has an origin story. If you think back, like the moment you knew that you actually did like chocolate and not just vanilla. Well, I have an origin story that led me to know that emotional intelligence is important at work. So I came up to Sunnyvale, right up the street, in 1999 to work for Yahoo as their first creative director. And I had come from LA, and I was really a master of my craft. I was well known, I was doing well, and I was flying all over the world and whatever. And then I came up here, and the first day at work is always really fun. You're like balloons and your name tag and all that stuff funny. So then the second day I'm sitting in meetings, and when I say I didn't understand anything, I didn't understand anything. It was all technical, and they were talking about things like Ruby and Oswald, which I found out later were the names of the servers. But I was overwhelmed with ignorance. And I thought, okay, go back to corporate housing tonight, maybe it'll get better. The next day, more meetings, and it got worse and worse. And I went home the third night and just like broke down in tears because I had never in my whole life felt so useless and left out and confused. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. So the next day I went to my boss and I was like, I think I made a mistake. Like, I don't know anything that's going on. I'm not a technical person. I'm not an engineer. I don't know why you hired me. And, trying to keep it together. And he said, listen, we have a whole building. It was only one building then. We have a whole building full of people that are coders and engineers. But what we don't know how to do is talk to consumers. That's what you're doing here. And I was like, oh, okay. This is how my skill that I already have can be additive. So I don't have to try to be someone else or know something different. So it was a huge relief, and I never forgot that feeling of being worried about being left behind. And I mean, let's face it, looking stupid. I wasn't used to that. You guys are definitely not used to that. So that's the origin story for me. So let's talk about EQ, emotional intelligence. The Q is because it's as opposed to intelligence quotient, right? Like your capacity for emotion or your capacity for intellect. Everyone here has huge IQ. I'm not worried about that. But I think there's a lot of like terminology flowing out there, and it tends to get a reputation of being like smushy and, oh, just be nice. And I don't, for me, that doesn't do it enough, and it's not useful to you. So I want to give you today is what's useful to you, something to take away. So EQ at its core, first of all, starts with self-awareness. So it is the ability to recognize, interpret, and respond to your own emotions. I don't know about you, but many times I fire off angry Slacks and emails. I don't take a moment to recognize I'm really angry. or irritated, and then interpret like, why is that, and then respond appropriately. And the appropriate response to that is not to fire off an angry email. So just being honest with how I learn every day with this. But then the other important thing in terms about being effective is that the other piece of EQ is to do that same thing, to recognize, interpret, and respond to the emotions of others. So, but first you focus on yourself and try that out and pay attention to your behavior. This dance in my career has really made a difference. Because talking about a thing to each other is not the same as building advocacy, teaching, building a connection. And so to me, this is simplistic, and yet I feel is something that is useful. You can interpret this. So the other reason why EQ is important is that the basis of every decision is emotional. Every decision. And you might think later, I don't think that's correct. I'm going to fire off an angry email to Cynthia. But if, it is pretty much true, because we are not programmed to like if this then that. We're not robots. So at the core, like I noticed that we had the startup competition, and I've never presented to a VC, but I have advised people on the fact, like, when you go into the room, think about the emotion underlying the person with the money. Because it's not just to make more money. There is an emotion to why they're going to make the decision to invest in your company. It's going to be unique to them, but it literally could be, I've failed a few times, I want my reputation to be better. So you're going to, if you don't really think about the fact that the person on the other side of the table has that emotion underlying the decision, you're going to like not get the call back, you're going to wonder what happened. But then when you go in the room, what is your emotion? It's not just to get investment. What's the emotion behind that? So that you can really recognize, well, what's going on inside me, and how am I going to project that rather than just, I want your money. So to be able to interpret what's going on inside you, because every decision is based in emotion. And when it comes to EQ and exercising influence, empathy is a powerful, compelling force. And because you guys are leaders, you're innovators, pioneers, I want to make something clear. This is what it's not. The last thing I want you to do is slow down, try to be nice when you don't feel like being nice, lots of hugs. That is not what this is about. You need to continue to go forward, be aggressive, get your stuff done. So it's not sympathy, it's not weakness, consensus, an echo chamber, oh yeah, I hate that too. That's not what it is. So please don't think, oh, I have to be nice. No. You have to be the person you are. You're focused on getting things done. You're focused on getting your message out to the world. Don't stop doing that. So I like to think about when I go into conversations, even though we really think about, no, I need to prevail in this meeting or come out with, it's like a yes or a no. But if I take it binary like that, it's too stiff, and I don't get a chance to assess what I'm feeling going in, and then try to figure out what's the emotion underlying the decision, the person on the other side of the table. So I think more about connecting, and yes, it takes longer and we don't always have time. And by the way, is it always going to work once we work together and get the practice going? It won't always work. It won't always work. We don't own the passenger manifest into the future. But you can do the best you can and feel like you're rooted in it and understand what's going on, right? So not 100% success, but I've found it works pretty well. But I've also made mistakes. And I'll tell you the story of a mistake. And my emotion right now, I have a little bit of fear, like if I'm going to be this vulnerable and tell you true stories, like are you going to retweet it? But I'm going to just get beyond that. So a real story at Walmart, and this is, I think, a great example of when I forgot about this practice. So when I first knew that 3D, consumer-facing 3D, really needed to be done at Walmart, like operationalize it in a big way, not just for pilots and things, I don't like to compare it to photography. First of all, most of my colleagues work in photography, so I have to be very careful. But in the beginning, when I'm presenting the business plan to an executive, the cost comparison, it is a compelling one. So late one night, I'm putting together this Excel chart, which I'm not very good at doing, but it's creative director math. But I'm putting together these columns of this asset compared to a photo, and like every percentage savings was in the 90s. It's 94% less than this, 98% less than that. And my emotion was like, I'm gonna look great. I am going to be the person. It's gonna feed my need to like be relevant and important. And then a couple assets, I had 100% savings. So when I went to my leadership, thankfully is an emotionally intelligent leader, I didn't at all stop to think, what's going to be the emotion underlying the decision for him to take this information up? I didn't think, I just literally was like, look at this. So I take this to him and I open the conversation by saying, this is going to look like I made it up. And I'm sure he stopped listening after that. And I'm doing all this, and luckily, he said to me, there's no way I'm going to take to the CEO of the largest retailer in the world something that looks like I made it up. And I was like, right. Because I forgot to think about the fact that for this guy, reputation has made his career. He's an amazing innovator. He's started companies, and obviously at Walmart, he's made a huge difference. So I didn't stop to think about that, and that was a mistake. But like I said, thankfully, he's an emotionally intelligent leader, and he walked me through it. But, so I don't always get it right. And when I get it wrong, I'm like, but I recognize why I got it wrong. If I had been presenting to someone else, here's what probably would have happened. La, 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 me, and look how good it looks. And then I would have not heard back. And I would have thought, can't believe they don't see the benefit of this. Like, oh my God, I would have just assumed it was because they had a problem. Like, I just wouldn't have understood what happened. So that's the story. So I hate doing word salads. This is the only one I have. So there are some common emotions, and again, you can start with yourself and say, and we're going to keep it to be about business. What are just some of the common emotions? And again, I'm going to admit the things that I think about. I worry about my reputation. I worry about continuing to be relevant, being included, being recognized. I want to get my bonus. I want job security. These are the things that I'm thinking about. These are my emotions. So I become aware of that. For instance, if I'm thinking about my reputation and I'm talking to someone about 3D and they're not getting it, I'm like, it bothers me because I want my reputation to be that person, that pioneer that pushes things through. But it's not just about me. So what this is like, and you guys will get these slides, it's just a framework. And I like to you'll come up with your own, but there's some questions that I ask when I can connect with someone, and you have to take the time to do that. You can't come at each other from the brain to the brain, because you will walk away wondering, well, it was so obvious, why didn't they do it? Well, because the underlying emotion wasn't getting fed. So some things I'll ask questions, and then I will listen, because in the answer is rooted in one of these emotions, or one that I haven't listed. It's not just the answer. So what are you working on these days? Whatever they answer you is probably linked to their reputation, but it could be any number of these things. So I ask them, how's it going? Right? That's like their bonus, their job security. What are your roadblocks? This is about their reputation, their self-confidence. And then what I do, because I'm trying to include people that want to appear that they know what we're talking about here, but they don't, and they don't want to admit it. It's not a good feeling. So what I do is I kind of flip the table and I think, okay, if they're feeling some self-doubt, they're worried about being left behind, what can I do to nurture that so that I come away with a partner? So I say, I want to get your feedback on 3D technology. Can I book some time with you and take you through it? Because first of all, it's honest. I want to know. But that way I'm feeding their emotion of feeling like they don't have anything to add. Because I actually believe they do. But they don't want to say, Silicon Valley, nobody wants to look stupid. It is like almost like a contagious thing. You will present really, really great stuff, and most of the people in the room, will not know what you're talking about. And one of the worst things you can do, any questions? Oh, crickets. And you're wondering, like, why aren't there any questions? They have a lot of questions, but they do not want to answer them in public. So book that side time. This is what I have to do all the time. So you ask questions, did you know that 3D reduces carbon footprint? This gets to the emotion of wanting to make a difference, and it's fairly universal, and this is exciting to people. So you pick apart XR, which has a lot of benefits, and you say to yourself, the person on the other side of the table, what is it that they might need emotionally? And how can I position things about XR that will feed that? Because if I just go talk about it and talk about it and talk about it, I'm going to be like, why isn't anyone doing it? And I'm going to get that emotion, and I'm going to fire off an irritated email to leadership. I don't know, they're just not getting it, which none of that is true. So I find it's my job through the day to make sure people are nurtured, and I set aside so that it's not in front of anyone else. And I also don't say, you probably know nothing. I will say, I feel like you're going to have a lot to add, and I want to get your feedback. And then I don't go too deep. If they're creative people and merchants, I don't need to go too deep. So I promised myself I wouldn't talk a mile a minute, but I'm so passionate. So with the merchant organization, what I did is I started talking to them, and I made assumptions about what was important to them. But what I found in talking to them was what I could bring to the Walmart merchandising organization that would be most impactful emotionally is to give them control over their content, because they didn't have it. They had beautiful imagery, storytelling, but once it was done, it was done. What if something's getting bad reviews? I'm thinking as a merchant, wow, that imagery is out there and I can't change it. What if we sold out? What if it's the holiday time and the velocity of the shelves are selling out so fast? As an e-com shopper, right, you see something beautiful and then you can't find it. And for the brand, it is a terrible moment of trust. So for the merchants, knowing that they want to have self-determination and control over their shelves, because of course they're being held to those numbers, but I needed to get underneath it. What's underneath being held to those numbers? So I was able to prevail with the merchant organization, one merchant at a time, by showing how 3D is so flexible. You can make changes like this, and in fact, I taught them how to do it themselves to make those swaps. So this was great, and then one merchant's telling another, not the thing that's on the top, but the thing emotionally. You guys, we can have control over our content. It's flexible. We can reuse assets. It's something selling out. Stuff that's important to them. But with the creative team, totally different. I had to set aside the whole it's cheaper than photography. Deadly. I would have had no one talking to me, and in fact, probably some sort of rebellion that I didn't even know about until it was too late. So what I thought about, I was able to tap into my own memory of feeling irrelevant and I didn't understand, because I really do believe that every one of those people has something to add. They just don't know it. They've been hearing, I literally hear people say, well, that's the way the world is going. That's the verbal equivalent of being passed by a train. That's what they're feeling. I'm going to get left behind. So, there could be people that don't care. And they're like, yeah, right. But I need those people. And I'll show you some work in a second. I need those people. And also, it's not okay to leave people behind. We do too much of that here. We think forward and we move so fast. The jet wash behind us is impossible to navigate. So again, I'm not asking you to be less inventive and less ambitious, and even to slow down, but just take a moment to realize what might be happening in your wake. So I went to the creative people. Now I've got all these disciplines. I've got the art directors who work on shoots, the art directors, the stylists, the photographers, the set builders, the sample coordinators. And I know that I represent a threat to them. I know that. So I just put that aside and I go forward and I talk to each one of them and I demonstrate to them, because I learned through talking to them that because 3D artist has the word artist in it, our model makers, they actually assumed, well, that person's taking my job. Now there are beautiful creators that are here that do, but the people we use to make thousands and thousands of models every week, those are software experts, right? They're not necessarily art directors and stylists and photographers. That's not who they are. So that was a moment for me to hear that, to really dig and find out, oh, it's the term I'm using. That's what's making you scared. So with each person with whom you work and you want to prevail, you need to ask yourself, first of all, am I irritated with them? Do I think they're an idiot? Do I think they just don't see it? They're not a visionary, whatever. That might be happening with me, but I get that in check. Because I don't want to be that person, and it's not going to help to have 150 merchants and creative people resisting me. And the worst thing that can happen, and it happens, well, leadership says we have to have 90% 3D by the end of the year. Great. Wish you hadn't said that. Because I want it to be their choice. So emotional intelligence is simply, we'll review, and again, please reach out to me because this takes some role playing and some practice. Being aware of your own emotions, thinking about what do they mean, how do I interpret that, and then is it the appropriate emotion that will help me move forward? And then the person on the other side, some people say emotional intelligence help you predict the outcome. I don't know that that's really true. I don't think I can control someone. It's not mind control, but it's just understanding, like I said, every decision is emotionally based. Every one. Now, you might say I'm wrong, and I want you to tell me. But when I learned that, I started to think about, you're right. And then I realized the person on the other side of we'll just call it the other side of the table, what I do now is I take a moment, of which we have none. I take a moment and I say, why would they resist? And if I think about that for a moment, it helps me position what about XR of the many, many, many features and benefits can I position to that person that might help them loosen up a little bit? Because not here in this conference, but out there in the world, we are really scary to anybody not working on this technology. Really scary. They don't know what to do, they're like this. And they don't need to be like this, because really there's something for everybody to use in this. I'm going to just go over here. I don't want to ruin the surprise if I have work to show, because I'm so proud of my team. I want to make sure that I don't flip the slide. Okay. So I'll just show you a couple examples, and then, like I said, I talk too much. So with the art directors, I've been mentoring them about what their role is. I've been taking art directors that have zero experience in this medium, teaching them just a little bit. What are you looking at when you see a 3D model? And this is what happens. I said, you have no budget restraints, no location restraints, no material restraints. You have your curation. There was 5 products curated by the merchant. And this is what they did. And I showed them, you think you have no role to play? Yes, you do. Because no 3D modeler could have done that. The same with the stylist. The stylist had never, ever, ever worked, and these are 3D in case that's not obvious, never, ever, ever worked in 3D. I trained them a little bit. I showed them. I said, you never have to go shopping again. You never have to make a return. And this is what happens. And now they realize, wow, what I have to offer is very important. And for the merchants, I mentioned self-determination, control, flexibility. This is one retail season worth of work for one merchant. They suddenly realized, and yes, because it's more economical, that they could start creating so many more stories without, they're not restricted to the photo studio, who are amazing people. They're not restricted, and merchants can invent new stories. They can quickly replace the story if they're getting certain data. This doesn't happen if I just think, well, they're just trying to sell stuff, or if I don't take the time to understand what is it that they need. Once I did that, it was so wonderful to see the gears turning, because everybody is really intelligent and has something to give. They just don't understand what it is they're looking at. And once they do, really beautiful things happen. Okay, 4 seconds left. So don't forget this. It's a primal fear. Okay, that was so much. Does anybody have any questions? I just said don't ever ask that, but anybody have any questions? Feedback, comments? Wow.
I'll provide some feedback.
Okay. Please reach out. because this, again, takes practice and obviously no charge. I really want to help you guys with this because I've seen it in practice, so thank you. All right. Woo!
I think this was the best session of the last couple of days, and I think you should have been on main stage with a full audience, and I think you could turn this into a great TED Talk. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, you just appealed to the emotion in me of like wanting. Yeah. I know it's a little, you turned me off. Okay. I know it's kind of smushy, but it's actually not. It's a really shrewd business technique to learn this. So, okay, I'll stop talking. Thank you. Thank you so much.